Okay. Hey, friends, welcome to Behind the Scene Divine Intimacy Radio. It's Dan and Jordan Burke, not Stephanie today, because we're going to be talking about something Jordan has some expertise in that people are interested in knowing about. It's the Enneagram. So hang out and do that with us. There's a couple things I want to tell you about before we jump into the show. And the show title, I think, is Demons in the Enneagram. So we have a Divine Intimacy and Marriage Retreat coming up. February 2023 at the Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament. Amazing place, life-changing retreat. The Avila Summit is coming in 2024. I think it's called the Triumph of the Immaculate Heart, the Marian Mystery and the Triumph of the Immaculate Heart. That's going to be awesome. And then the last thing I'm going to tell you about is Pilgrimage to the Holy Land. We have filled up for 2023. But we already have 6 people signed up for our pilgrimage to the Holy Land in 2024, and that is going to be a life-changing experience. So go out to SpiritualDirection.com /events to learn more. Okay, ready to roll? On your mark, set, go. This is Dan and Jordan Burke. Welcome to Divine Intimacy Radio, your radio haven of rest. He has no idea what to say now because Stephanie usually says the hermitage of the heart, right. And I say monastery of the mind, where we lift our hearts and minds to heaven to draw our hearts, to draw ourselves to the wisdom of the saints, the teachings of the church. And in this case today, we're going to be talking about the wisdom of the church in the sense of keeping us from error and harmful things and that right. sort of thing. So Jordan is, of course, my son. He normally produces the show. We have our trusty Chase Stevens chasing it down on the other side today. He's backing up for Jordan so he could be on the show. We have a what do you call it?
First class relic.
First class relic of
Saint Gemma.
Saint Gemma. She's praying for us,
watching over us
on this show. We're talking about things that relate to spiritual warfare. Yeah. And you recently were interviewed about this on what show was that?
It's a parenting podcast by Dr. Mary Ruth Hackett, I believe is who it was. And I wish I could remember the name of her podcast, but
folks can look it up. Mary Ruth Hackett, Hackett, I imagine.
I believe so, yeah.
Great. And why did she have you on the show? What was her interest?
So Enneagram, for whatever reason, I think it's kind of has a cyclical nature within the background of everything that goes on, but it's kind of reemerging.
Yeah.
And it has been since, I guess, the 60s, but it's really kind of coming to a head in the younger, like my generation and younger.
Yeah.
And so she wanted to warn parents about the dangers of it. She was coming, the show was great. It's worth listening to. She was coming from her expertise in psychology and explaining, hey, listen, there's absolutely zero psychological backing to this.
So she's a PhD.
Yeah.
In psych or psychology or psychiatry.
I couldn't say for sure.
Yeah, it's okay, but either one of
right.
those.
She's an expert in the area. Yeah.
Right. And so she was concerned with what she's seen out there. And of course, from her standpoint, it's problematic.
Right.
So what is the Enneagram? What is this thing we're talking about?
Well, so the Enneagram, if you search it, it's going to pop up with something like a personality test.
Yeah.
People generally think it's a personality test. It pops up next to like the DISC assessment. It pops up next to all these other popular, what's the other one that it generally pops up next to?
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, things of that nature. But the issue is that it's not a personality assessment.
Uh-huh.
And then when you start diving into the history, you start to see where it originated from, what purpose it originated for, from the guys who made it themselves, from their own writing and from their own mouths. It has a demonic nature, demonic backing from the very beginning. And that's why we're I've been hammering it for a while, but more people are kind of picking up the call as well, as they should, saying, hey, you guys need to stay away from this.
So that's a big, bold claim. How do you prove your claim that it has demonic origin?
Thankfully, I don't have to. I'm literally just repeating what they said. So if you look at
they?
So the architects of the Enneagram, I was about to get into the architects, you basically have 3 guys. You have George Krajef, is difficult to pronounce the last name, Oscar Chazo, and then Claudio Naranjo, who was a student of Oscar Chazo. But it was primarily these two guys. What's interesting is that there are people who try to make the claim that it originated even further back to Evagrius of Pontus, which is not true.
Right.
It can't be proven anyway.
Yeah.
And further back to somebody else who I can't remember. It's not in my notes, but they try to say, it's been around for centuries,
and it's connected to Christian tradition, and
right.
They do the same thing with centering prayer and try to say it's connected to Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross and the Cloud of Unknowing. And if you know those writers, those claims are completely bogus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So looking at the architects or who I call the architects of the Enneagram, George kind of started it himself. I'll stick with the first names because it's easier. George started it. When he started this, he was involved with all sorts of different things, from the Sufis, which is like a Muslim spinoff type. I don't want to give full
mystical
definition.
Kind of.
Right.
Yeah, because I've heard Father Mitch Pacwa talk about this, it being rooted back in that realm.
Right. And then a whole lot of other different things. And in fact, I'm glad you mentioned that, because Father Mitch Pacwa is probably leading. He's probably the foremost expert, I would venture to guess, from what I've read on this topic.
Yeah.
Because he was trained in it and taught it, and then realized the issues with it.
Then he repented,
and he hammers.
I guess he went from bad Jesuit to good Jesuit. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if he'd say
that. He hammers it, and a lot of what I'm repeating can be found in his text. Although there are some things that I have found from George's writings, from Oscar's writings, and even video from Claudio.
So now you said from Father's writings, we're on EWTN radio. Of course, we're live streaming, but this will end up on EWTN radio. What book are you referencing? Because I'm sure it's in EWTN's religious catalog.
I don't think it's a book. It's a very long article that he wrote.
Okay.
It's sitting on my desk.
I think it's Catholics in the New Age. I think you'll find it in Catholics in the New Age.
Right.
I'm pretty sure.
Right.
But if you look up Father Mitch Pacwa and
Enneagram,
you're going to find what he wrote.
And he has like I said, he's probably the foremost expert on this topic.
Right.
Now.
So, but let's go beyond that, right? Because you can find that, but you've done some research and found some pretty damning things that back up your claim that it's demonic in origin.
Right. Well, and I think it's important to start by disassembling the false idea that it's a personality system, because George, who brought it to light, who created it, never intended it to be used for. There wasn't even any typing at the time. So Enneagram, for those who are unaware, it's you take these tests and then you get a type, and so it's 9 types. So Ennea is 9, and then Gram is I forgot what points, I believe is what it is. Mm-hmm. And so people will have, excuse me, they will have, I'm a type 3 with a wing 4 or whatever it is, right? They're trying to associate with whatever this says it is. However, George never had those types. Those were developed later on. What he developed was, he developed it for the use of essentially Gnosticism. His belief was that all of the answers, all of the mysteries of the universe, everything that you could ever want to know can be found within the Enneagram, which is Gnosticism, right?
So when you say he never developed it, what you mean is he did develop this system to gain Gnostic wisdom,
right?
So-called wisdom,
right?
But then it was morphed into be used as a pseudo personality test.
And the reason I bring that up is because when you tell people, hey, this wasn't made to be used as a personality test, it was made for something completely different, their argument is generally, well, I've gained some knowledge from that. It's like, well, but that's not how it was made. It's like, I think I use the analogy of using cyanide for seasoning. It's like, you can use it for seasoning. You're just not going to like the effects of
and you might have a demon tell you the truth from a Ouija board,
right?
But the costs of that are pretty high,
right? Precisely. Yeah. So even Richard Rohr has fully admitted that the origin was never designed for personality testing, and that should be telling.
And Father Richard Rohr is a big purveyor of this, and he's a guy who's way off the rails in terms of being opposed to the magisterium of the church and the longstanding teachings of the church.
Right.
his works are a poison. He hides it under spirituality, but it's
Right.
poison stuff. But he's been advocating it for a long time.
And just to reiterate, even he says that yes, this was never intended to be originally a personality test.
Okay, so we haven't got to the demon thing yet. So
Right.
keep going.
So now we can get into that. So George, Oscar, Claudio, they all work together, right? This is later on. Oscar and Claudio kind of developed the typing, and you can even watch. There's even a video where Claudio admits to where he got the name, all this kind of stuff, right? And what's interesting is they had even said that when they spent time with George really didn't spend a whole lot of time on the Enneagram. It's something that they took and kind of morphed into their own uses. The problem with that is that Oscar, George, Claudio, all of these guys were all involved in shamanism, all involved in spirit reading, all involved in spirit dancing,
deeply demonic,
and the
dangerous
witchcraft
junk. Yeah.
Right. It just goes down the rails, talking to the dead, all these other different things.
So basically, if I were to summarize it, if you want a personality test from hell,
right,
that Satanists would love you to use and witches would love you to use,
right,
this is it. So
or if you want a fake personality test,
right?
It's not.
No, it's way worse than that, though. That's my point, though.
Right.
It's way worse than a fake personality test, because when you use or pursue things, I mean, Scripture uses the phrase "doctrines of demons." St. Paul in the New Testament. When you go and you try to seek wisdom from demons, you are, in some sense, subordinating yourself to them,
right,
and opening yourself up to them, which is why it's so stinking dangerous times 10.
Right.
But keep going. Tell us more about the origin.
So they're involved in all these different occult practices, fully admitted to it. They're all about it. And one of them at one point, I don't remember who it was. I think it was actually George, was trying to be an Orthodox, or wanted to be an Orthodox priest, and basically just rejected all religion and sought to find truth elsewhere, which is what kind of brought about, his dabbling in shamanism and witchcraft and all these other different things that have been expressly condemned by the church. So why do we say that? Because you cannot have good fruit from a bad tree.
Right.
And they're involved in things that are mortally grave and sinful, that are condemned by the church, and creating this thing that there are many in the church that are trying to use. So you just can't, that doesn't mesh. It doesn't work. Right. So what's fascinating is, and I have all of these links and resources on my website and the research library.
What is that? Give me your URL.
So dotheharderthing.com.
Yeah.
If you go to resources, at the bottom of that page, there's a research library where I try to hold on to all these links, including videos, so people can find it all easier.
Great.
But and with the video specifically that I want to talk about before we go to the break is Claudio, who admits twice, color video, that he used automatic writing in order to define the types, the personality types.
Yeah.
And it's
no, we need to head into a break, and why don't we cut it there? When we come back from the break, I want you to talk about automatic writing. If I remember right, even Janet Bankovic,
Women of Grace
has covered that pretty well. She's got some good stuff against the New Age movement as well out at Women of Grace. But when we get back from the break, what's the big deal? Automatic writing. Who cares? Jordan's going to tell us. And you're listening to Divine Intimacy Radio. We're talking about the demonic origins of the Enneagram, and we'll be right back. So 12, it's 12:15.
Yeah,
we just do the exact same.
Yeah, we can do the same.
Okay, on your mark, set, go. Welcome back to stop, reset. Come on now. How do I get rid of all that? Okay, very good. Thanks. On your mark, set, go. Welcome back. This is Dan and Jordan Burke, Divine Intimacy Radio. Jordan's a special guest today, taking Stephanie's chair. Of course, he is my son, of whom I am very proud. He has a great ministry. He works for the Avila Foundation. He helps us with email, social media, with what else do you do here? You do all kinds of
drive a tractor.
You drive it. He works on we have a
depends on the day.
Home base is a retreat center, so he manages the property. Yeah. But all right. So back to the Enneagram, and we were talking about before the break, automatic writing. What's the big deal?
So I will preface with, I'm not an expert on automatic writing. I have I have an understanding basically from the help of Women of Grace, who
Right.
their article is probably one of the only ones that you can find on the process.
From a
However,
Catholic.
From a Catholic perspective,
Yeah.
right? Although that being said, if you search automatic writing, you'll find it on a lot of new age, not even new age, I mean witchcraft type websites.
Well, and there's even a popular book that I've seen in Catholic circles called Jesus Calling. I think that came out of automatic writing.
I was going to say that's the first time I had heard of it, was
Yeah.
some writings from some saint, or
Yeah.
what was attributed to a saint was not permitted by the church because of the use of automatic writing.
Okay.
Yeah. So the church is aware of it and has says
condemned
it's bad.
it. Yeah.
But it's essentially, if I'm giving like a very nutshell explanation, it's you're opening yourself up to some sort of spirit so that they essentially write for you.
Mm-hmm.
The ideas just kind of flow through you, and some of the definitions people have described, the pen is like moving on its own. So it's very different from like a creative writing process, which is just you using your brain.
Right. Demons added is quite a bit different.
Right. That's the problem. It's I think the most accurate comparison that I've seen is like like a Ouija board, where the spirit moves the whatever that little thing is. It's the same thing with the pen, which is why the church has said that's bad. I mean, if I'm going to give the most clear definition, it's essentially saying, hey, some unknown spirit, come write for me.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, we know the differences between the levels of possession, but I mean, it's like, that's borderline possession.
Yeah. And folks don't know, the reason he's referencing that is because Stephanie and I have been involved in exorcism ministry and continue to be involved in deliverance ministry and work with exorcists across the country. And the sad part of all this is people blow it off and they think it's no big deal, and not everybody ends up possessed. I guess if everyone did, people would be more afraid. But that doesn't mean they're not influenced significantly by these things. So I think if I remember right, when you did a funny or a well thought out Instagram post on this at Do the Harder Thing, you talked about a dream or a vision one of these guys had. You said with respect to demonic origin.
Yeah. So Oscar, or I believe it was Oscar Chazo. I'm referencing my notes real quick. Yeah. His concept of the Enneagram that he took from George, he developed while high on mescaline. So
you're going to go use this. I mean, there's just no way that it's sane to use this
precisely
as a Christian.
Right. And it's one of the most clear. So there's a lot of squishiness with some of this new age stuff, right? Because it's hard to narrow down because the goalpost constantly changes. But this is one of the most clear that I've come across in my study of new age, where it's like everywhere you turn, there's a deep black pit of problems.
Yeah.
From the shamanism and the witchcraft to the high on mescaline, and he had two higher beings give him the information to write out to describe this is what the Enneagram, this is what it should be. And then his buddy Claudio, or student and friend, who used automatic writing to help create the types. This is what the types should be. Again, another spirit influenced or demonic influence is more appropriate of a definition.
So I want to, just before we end the show, we got about 6 minutes or so with this. I want to speak to one issue I think you've heard over and over now. You and I haven't talked about this, but I know you've heard it.
Right.
It helped me.
Right.
So here's the thing. If there was a donkey that helped Balaam to not get killed by an angel, right? Balaam was off the rails and the donkey's trying to help him. You don't go to look into the donkey for wisdom, right?
Right.
I think I did a video on YouTube called "Beware the Donkey." Whether it helps you or not is irrelevant to whether or not it's a good thing. I have a buddy, I always talk about him because he came to Christ at a Grateful Dead concert.
Right.
And what happened is I actually had somebody write in and what did they do? Justified that Grateful Dead is good and all that. It's like, oh wow. So what happened at the concert is the Lord lifted the veil and he saw clearly what was happening in all the demonic activity at the concert.
Right.
And then he somehow was led to the answer being Christ, right? So another analogy is you don't need to go to Grateful Dead concerts to get to know Jesus. But the thing that happens is if there's good that comes out of these things, it's because of James 4:7 and God's promise. If you draw near to God, he'll draw near to you. but that doesn't justify the use of these things. It's just that God loves us, and he will, in any way he can, draw us to himself. But sorry, editor. But he will draw us to anything, but that doesn't justify the means.
Right.
I've heard, I think Richard Rohr is the guy who teaches false teachings. I've heard people say, well, he helped me into the church. Great. I was helped by a heretic into the church too,
right,
by Molinos, who was a quietist, taught false teachings about the church, but he helped me understand aridity. But really, who helped me? God helped me.
Right.
So when I figured out he was a heretic, I took the book and shredded it and used it in the bottom of the birdcage.
Well, and even in my own conversion story, right?
Mhm.
What was the major downfall of my conversion story? Pornography use.
Right.
So
porn.
Yeah.
You don't use porn to come to Jesus.
Right. It just doesn't make any sense. And that's not even touching on the subjectivity of help.
Right.
The examples that you gave were very clear examples. It brought somebody to the church.
Right.
But when we're talking about the use of the Enneagram and self-knowledge, right, and personality tests, which is very loose anyway. I mean, the doctor who interviewed me was very great at explaining this.
Now, Myers-Briggs is solid, though. Backed by a ton of research.
Sure.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, she mentioned the Big Five had about 40 years of testing.
Yeah.
So it's very
exactly.
valid.
Yeah.
So something like that, right? But this self-knowledge, how do you determine whether or not it's good? It's very subjective. So when people say, yes, it helped me, I'm like,
but how? Yeah. Tell me about how you think it helped you.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're already in the church, and here's the problem. If you are already a Catholic listening to this and you are utilizing this, despite all of the history that they write and claim and speak themselves, these architects who created it, what good can it be doing you? You're already in the church.
Yeah.
Why are you looking for self-knowledge in this? Why are you utilizing tools that are outside of the church?
Yeah. You don't need demons to help you to Jesus. You don't need Buddha, as I say about mindfulness, to help you to Jesus. You don't need Sufis to help you to Jesus, because the church, the entire divine economy, my favorite quote from the Catechism, is ordered to bring you to union with God.
Right.
You need nothing outside of the church, period. And people who lead you there are people you should ignore, you should resist, you should not buy their books. You buy stuff on mindfulness, you're going to damage your soul, because it comes out of Buddhism.
Right.
No matter what the author claims, no matter even if the author is orthodox outside of those claims.
Right. And so the question becomes, well, why can't we use tools outside of the church? And my answer has always been, have you read all of the writings of the doctors of the church?
Right.
Have you read through all of Scripture?
Have you exhausted all the means?
Right.
You already have.
That's the perfect way of saying it. Have you read all of Scripture? Have you read all of the catechisms? There's more than one.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that.
No. Now, it is true, of course. There is legitimate science that we can leverage. You're not speaking against that, like the Myers-Briggs, which I've used in the past, and has, as the PhD you were on her show said, has 40 years of testing behind it.
The Big Five does. I don't know what Myers-Briggs has.
It's one of those.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but what you're saying is, when it comes to things that, the church is not lacking in its resources to help you gain self-knowledge.
I'm basically warning against the draw, because there's some draw that New Age, putting Enneagram within the realm of New Age.
Yeah.
There's some draw that it has that has people constantly going, I want to look over there.
That's because it's demonic.
Right.
It has a power and a draw to it, because there's crap in you that's drawn to the demonic that you need to get rid of.
Right.
And the fact that you're drawn to it is something you need to be healed of, not to follow.
Right. Precisely. So that's what I'm warning against. There's more than enough within the church that can give you that knowledge that helps, So that's kind of what I'm trying to say.
So if folks want to find out more, they can go out to Do the Harder Thing. Tell folks about your.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I'd like to look into it myself, I'd probably start by just Googling Father Mitch Pacwa and Enneagram and read what he's written.
Yeah.
After that, I have I always get this wrong. It's Jesus Christ, the water bearer of life.
Jesus Christ, the bearer of the water of life.
Okay, I always get that mixed up.
That
talks about it as well
on the Vatican's website.
Right, and I have that link along with links to the videos, along with links to all sorts of things.
And you did a funny, would you call it a funny video that you did?
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, he has a funny video you can share on. It's on Facebook or social media.
Yeah, Do the Harder Thing Instagram, because Facebook is a cesspool. But
Yeah, but you can evangelize.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So anyway, if you want to read this for yourself, if you want to confirm it for yourself, all those links are there.
Yeah.
And bear in mind that I'm just repeating what these guys have written and said.
Yeah.
It's as I said, this is one of the most clear cases of any new age thing out there that I've seen so far. That is just everywhere you turn. It's just bad. There's just demons wrapped around every aspect of it.
And you don't have to be Catholic. I mean, if you've got non-Catholic friends, this is really growing in evangelical Christianity.
Huge.
That's been a surprise. I was really shocked because they historically, I mean, I'm a convert from evangelicalism. Historically, they've been much more suspicious and discerning on these things than even sometimes Catholics, than in my experience. But it's like growing like crazy in those circles.
Yeah, it was introduced to me originally by a counselor, a Christian counselor that I was going to.
You're kidding me?
No, that's where I was introduced.
Have you gotten back to them and said, "Hey, this is not good"?
I don't think they're receptive. So
Okay.
I have thought about it, and I've discerned it probably wouldn't be the smartest thing to do.
Yeah.
So unfortunately,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate all your research and the good work you're doing to get the word out on this and many other things about our faith. Check out dotheharderthing.com. That's the website. And Jordan's always fun and interesting. He's a much more fun version of the Burke clan.
Depends on how much sleep I've gotten.
Right. That's true. All right. Why don't you take us out?
Until next time, may the God of peace make you perfect in holiness. May he preserve you whole and entire, spirit, soul, and body, irreproachable at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ.
For that. 14. Good.